Sandalphon was always everyone's favorite character back in the base game. People called him a better protagonist than the captain. But no matter how fun Sandalphon as a character is, in terms of his combat performance, I do think that he was absolutely gutted in this new expansion. They gave him some pretty big nerfs, so his previous playstyle is now completely unusable, and his master styles have sadly not done enough to make up for that. But since I know that many people still like Sandalphon, I wanted to make this guide so we can salvage what's left of him, so that we can all still play our favorite character online. Now before we start real quick, I have noticed my previous guides becoming longer and longer, even reaching well over half an hour, and so this time I'm going to do things a little bit differently. I will be going a little bit faster than usual. It would be really nice to know if you enjoy this faster style of video, or if you do prefer the full information in my previous guides. But now let's actually get started. So first of all, when I said Sandalphon was nerfed, I was specifically talking about the light step ability. So the highest DPS in the base game was this, where you would just spam light step, and you could cancel it with your guard. And this would be your incredibly high DPS. And it would also be incredibly safe, because this light step is also a perfect dodge. So just slap on flight over fight, and you could pretty much cheese the entire game. But as you can see, it basically does no damage at all. And also flight over fight has been nerfed significantly. And so this playstyle is completely dead and should never ever be used. Now the only function that light step has is to simply be used as a gap closer, but nothing else anymore. So now we just need to play Sandalphon in the way that he was intended, which is to just use your skills, then follow those up with a combo finisher. Now these combo finishers are pretty powerful, as are the skills. And also what I'd like to do after these combo finishers is to just gap close with a light step. And then when your skills are off cooldown, you just start doing a normal combo. And when you see that the skill has come off cooldown, just use it. Another combo finisher. And that's about that. But of course you only have 2 attack skills in the Chromatic Wings form. And so realistically, Sandalphon only has 2 sources of damage now. And because we still need to build gauge in this form, it means that Sandalphon's DPS is now on the lower end of the game. And because of this, Sandalphon has sadly received the biggest downfall in the entire game. Now don't get me wrong, he is still completely viable for infinity bosses. You can still absolutely destroy them even if you have a full party of Sandalphons. But compared to other characters in the game, he really isn't so good anymore. Now as for your skills, typically these are the ones you want to be using, simply because these build gauge the fastest. Ecliptica has an incredibly short cooldown. No Way Home also has a pretty short cooldown. Vervantele is just nice for stun damage. And Talvio will of course fill up the entire Archangel gauge at once. Now because we're using Talvio, I do recommend getting Stoutheart just on your summons. And I know you get Stoutheart in your Chromatic Wings form as well, but because we need to use Talvio in the human form, I still have Stoutheart here. His other skills just really aren't that useful. So Breath of Life is a heal that removes debuffs. The healing from this is completely unnecessary. Most people are using Ventus anyway, so that doesn't work. Now being able to cleanse debuffs is pretty nice, but I run potent greens in all of my builds, and I really do think everyone should just run that. And when people can cleanse their own debuffs, you don't really need a debuff cleanser on a skill. You also just get the skill during Chromatic Wings, so just use it in there if you really need this effect for some reason. Power of 1. Now the buffs that this provides are pretty bad. Everyone is maxed out on crit rate, and a 10% attack up is only 5% enhanced damage, so it's a really low effect, and it doesn't even work during overdrive. I do think that the defense buff is really nice. I do like being tankier. It increases your uptime and it makes the game more comfortable to play. But sacrificing an entire skill slot for only 20% defense, I don't really think that's worth it. Alone in Heaven just has too long of a cooldown to build gauge. Now it does also come with paralysis, but the problem with paralysis is that you need to time it yourself so that you can potentially skip a phase. But when it's on a counter, you cannot choose when to use this, and it is therefore pretty bad. And Ethereal Prison is a debuff, and this debuff will make it so that the enemy will always take the weaker element damage. Now even though this is the best effect in the entire game, you get this with 100% uptime on War Elemental, which everyone is running, so that makes this one completely obsolete. Plus, once again, just like Breath of Life, you also get this during Chromatic Wings, so why bring it here? And as for how to use these skills, first of all, if you have Talvio active, always use Talvio first. This one will just fill out the Archangel gauge entirely. Now keep in mind, only the final hit has to hit the enemy. You can miss all 11 hits and only hit the final one and it will still work. But on the flip side, if you hit the first 11 attacks but miss the last one, you will not fill up the gauge. So make sure you always hit that last one. You cannot dodge while doing the attack, which is why I like to have Stoutheart. But let's say Talvio is on cooldown. You just use your skills, followed by combo finishers, and then another one. And then you just cycle through those. And when all of your skills are on cooldown, you just start doing your basic attacks. And you just keep doing this until the gauge is full. But yeah, that was a pretty short recap of how Sandalphon works. But now we get to the main part of the guide. And all of these master styles, by the way, are the reason why I really don't like Sandalphon in this game. They either are incredibly frustrating to play, or they just give you a tiny amount of extra damage that is basically insignificant. So we're starting off with Promising Wings. This one will give you a unique buff called Limitless Light when activating Chromatic Wings. And the actual effect of Limitless Light is pretty good, because when you exit Chromatic Wings with a Zohar Strike, you will get 50% of the Archangel gauge restored. restored, meaning that you essentially only have to fill up half of the gauge. Now this is a really good effect and it does increase his uptime significantly. However, the problem with this playstyle is that the duration of Limitless Light is significantly shorter than the duration of Chromatic Wings. So when I activate Chromatic Wings here, you can see the Limitless Light buff above my character, but what you'll also see is that my Archangel gauge is only halfway, but my Limitless Light buff is already about to run out. And if I were to use a Zohar Strike now, I do not get any gauge refunded, and I have to fill it up from 0 again. And this means that if you want to use this playstyle, you will always have to end your Chromatic Wings very early, and this can make it very uncomfortable to play. Luckily, the developers have implemented some quality of life features, like for example during Link Time and a Chain Burst, both the Chromatic Wings gauge as well as the Limitless Light buff will not deplete. So when the entire party is Chain Bursting, you can just keep staying in Chromatic Wings form, and you will not lose your Limitless Light buff. So at least for those parts of the fight, this playstyle is not as frustrating, but I'm specifically talking about the in-between phases. One additional benefit to this playstyle is that your most powerful attacks are these two skills, Revantele and No Way Out. But if I use these, you can see that their cooldown is incredibly long. And keep in mind, I am actually running quick cooldown as well as Cascade, and yet they still just don't come off cooldown. And you can see I'm only able to get off one Revantele during the entire Archangel gauge. And so in general, no matter how much Archangel gauge you have, you won't really be able to get off that many skills anyway. But when I activate the Archangel gauge again, all of my skills will come off cooldown. And so you can just use these skills, follow them up with combo finishers. Then you just use a Zohar Strike to exit Chromatic Wings while the buff is active. You get your gauge refunded and you can start building up gauge again. And when I enter Chromatic Wings form again, all of my cooldowns will have reset and I can start using them again. And so essentially what Limitless Light does is it enables a very fast rotation where you quickly swap between the Chromatic Wings form and the human form, and the time it takes to build this 50% gauge is shorter than the time it takes for those skills to come off cooldown. And so you are gaining uptime when using this playstyle, but like I said, because you have to end it so early, it is a really uncomfortable to use playstyle. This is one of the only master styles in the entire game that I actively dislike to use. But I do still recommend just giving Promising Wings a try. Maybe you do like the faster paced Limitless Light playstyle, and if you do, then make sure you go for this one, because I would say that all of these styles are pretty bad for damage anyway. They're good enough to at least clear the infinity bosses, but you're never going to see any crazy numbers. So just pick whichever one you like the most, or in my case, whichever one you hate the least. But if you really do want to use this playstyle, then here are the master traits that I would recommend. But now let's look at a master style that is not really frustrating to play, but still has some issues. So the Essence Tree, Finding Refuge. This master style relies on buffs. When Sandalphon is buffed by 10 different effects, he gets a damage cap increase of 100%. 10 buffs might seem like a lot, but Sandalphon can actually reach this number on his own. Although this will require him to use both 6 combo finishers in human form, as well as use the power of 1 skill. But as I've already explained, the power of 1 is a pretty bad skill, and also because it's a buff, it doesn't build gauge and it doesn't allow you to go into a combo finisher either. And even if you do get those 10 different effects, it's only a 100% damage increase. So best case scenario, this is only like a 5% DPS increase. It's really not that great. And even if we look at rank 1, you do get a small amount of enhanced damage and supplementary damage. Now, even though these effects are pretty nice, you do need to land 6 combo finishers in human form, and the effects themselves are pretty small. So really, you're not even getting that much DPS with this style. And so I also just really don't like this master style. But one thing that I do like is that you don't have to cancel your Chromatic Wings early, like with Promising Wings. And instead, you can just keep in the Chromatic Wings form and do all of your combos there. And so luckily, this playstyle is not frustrating to use. Although if you're going to fight against Lucilius, you might want to choose a different one, because Lucilius can purge buffs. And so this playstyle is completely useless against Lucilius specifically. But in case you do want to go for this master style, here are the traits that I would recommend. And now for the final master style, we have the crux one, Bell Tools for D. This one will focus on the Ethereal Prison skill, but now in addition to granting elemental friction, you will also stack up a debuff called Bell of War. Now the actual effect of Bell of War itself is pretty bad. You will only get a tiny amount of extra damage when using a Zohar Strike, and this will stack up to 1% extra damage for each level of Bell of War, but because this is only 10% on one attack in your entire kit, this is a pretty bad effect. At rank 2, whenever you gain a level of Bell of War, you will extend the elemental friction's duration, but this is also pretty useless because we're using more elemental, which has 100% uptime, not 30 seconds like this one. So this one is also pretty bad, but luckily level 3 is actually pretty decent, because whenever the enemy is debuffed with 10 levels of Bell of War, Sandalphon will deal 20% more damage against these enemies. And so this is actually a pretty decent effect. Now the only real downside of this playstyle is that it can take quite a while for Bell of War to stack up to level 10, but when it does have an infinite duration, and so at that point you will just straight up deal 20% more damage for the entire fight. Now I still cannot call this a fun master style, because nothing changes about the way you play him, but at the very least it doesn't have the same frustrations that the other two have. And so this one is usually my go-to when I play Sandalphon, simply because I just really don't like the Limitless Light buff. I think it's a really annoying playstyle, and I don't like to use Finding Refuge either, because you are required to use the power of 1, and I just think that is a pretty bad skill. Not to mention the payoff of only 100% damage cap is significantly worse than the payoff of dealing 20% more damage. Now I don't like to be this negative about a character. Typically I really do enjoy most playstyles for most characters, but I just really don't like any of these for Sandalphon. I hope that they're able to change some of these master styles with future patches, because currently I do think that Sandalphon is one of the weakest characters in the entire game, and also one of the least fun ones. And that is incredibly sad to see, because he used to be one of the best and one of the most fun. But yeah, if you want the least frustrating master style, I do recommend going for this one. And once again, here are my master traits. For this playstyle, you don't even need to use Ethereal Prison on your base form, because you're going to start the fight by using Talvio and entering Chromatic Wings anyway. You do get Ethereal Prison there, and so I'd much rather just use Revantele, because this one can build a lot of gauge, and that means that whenever you exit Chromatic Wings, you'll just be able to go back into it faster. So what you're just going to do for this master style is about what you would expect. You would use Ethereal Prison, and then from here you just cycle through your skills and your combo finishers like normal. And as you can see, you will slowly build up these Bell of War stacks. He's already at 4. Now it can take a little bit of time, and if you're doing these 60-second tests, you'll not be able to see the damage that this one provides. So now you can see why I didn't bring Ethereal Prison in my normal skill list. So my Chromatic Wings has run out, but as you can see, the Bell of War stacks are still applied. But since I did bring my other skills, I can now build up gauge much faster than if I were to have Ethereal Prison, which cannot build gauge. Now the one thing that I do have to add for this playstyle is that normally you would spam Zohar Strike over and over again during link time, but because using Zohar Strike will remove the Bell of War debuff, you actually do not want to use Zohar Strike during link time, and instead just cycle through your skills. Now this will make him do a little bit less damage during link time, but I do think that overall this playstyle is the least frustrating to use. And now for the final section of this video, we will go into the actual sigil setup. Now one thing you'll notice, I only have 4 setup sigils and not 5, and that is simply because I really did need an extra trait. But when we look at the actual list, it looked like this. So I have Ventus and Aqua as my Celestials. We obviously have damage cap as well, supplementary damage, and War Elemental. Now Fatebreaker is here not necessarily for the extra damage cap, but more so for the extra attack. I know it's popular to just get rid of all of your damage cap sigils, because they supposedly don't really matter as much anymore in the expansion. And while that is true for things like Celestial Terra, I do still like to run Fatebreaker for the extra attack, because not every character is able to hit damage cap on all of their attacks. And this one does give a massive unconditional attack increase when doing Fatebreaker quests, so I still like to run this one, but the most important ones are still all of these ones here. Now you could also run Immortal Shell, but 2 things. Number 1, I don't have it because I don't like farming for collectibles. And number 2, it's only a 1-slot sigil, so that means that effectively you have to get rid of 2 traits in order to be able to slot in Immortal Shell. But if you really want to get that 1 or 2 extra % DPS, and you do have Immortal Shell, then you can use it if you want. But other than that, I think all of these utility skills are more important. So first of all, I am running a lot of quick cooldown and Cascade and Nimble Onslaught. And that is because, like I said, the skill cooldowns in Chromatic Wings form can take a pretty long time. And all of these 3 skills together will make it so that they don't nearly take as long anymore. And when our skill cooldowns are much shorter, we can get the most out of our Chromatic Wings form, and we're able to get off many more skills. And we're able to get off more skills than we were able to before. So I really do like to run quick cooldown, Cascade and Nimble Onslaught together. But In addition to that, we also have some other utility skills. So we obviously have Greater Aegis for HP, Stronghold and Steel Nerves for extra mitigation. Improved dodges is one of the best sigils to have. Now I do have Nimble Defense here for my weapon. To be honest, you can also go for Drain. I think Drain works absolutely fine for this playstyle, considering that we already have Nimble Onslaught, but both of these will work fine either way. Potion Order is here. I don't think I need to explain this one. Stout Heart once again. I have this on my summon, and even though you get Stout Heart during Chromatic Wings form, I like to use it for Talvio. But you might notice that I'm not using Guts or other revive, and that is because when you activate Chromatic Wings, you will always just get a stack of Guts, and so I didn't think it was as necessary to run in the build. And Sandalphon also just has a couple of master traits that make him even tankier, like this damage cut here for example, and so I just didn't think it was as necessary to also slot them in here. Now if you do want those skills, you can slot them in, it's just that I prefer the mitigation from these two, in addition to the extra cooldowns from these ones, but I'll leave that decision up to you. Now as for his unique sigils, Sandalphon has 4 of them. So the first one is his Warpath. This one is just really nice to have. You will get a little bit of extra gauge when getting a perfect dodge with Light Step. Now I don't think you're really going to use Light Step a lot for perfect dodging, and so that's not really the effect that you would use this for, but the extra enhanced damage when activating Chromatic Wings is really good. It is a massive damage increase, and it is active during your most powerful form, so always slot this in. It's a really good sigil, and you should always have it. And the same is true for Supreme Primarch's Awe. This one will just give you extra gauge gain, and the faster you can build up your gauge, the faster you can go into Chromatic Wings, and so the higher your uptime is. It's a really good utility sigil to have, but the other trait that comes on the Awakening sigil is not as useful, because what Nimbus does is it simply gives you a bit of defense and HP restoration when you exit Chromatic Wings. Now if you are going for the Limitless Light playstyle, you will be able to trigger this effect more often, but especially for the other two master traits, this one just loses a lot of value. And even though 20% defense can be a nice effect, keep in mind that with Stronghold you get more than 20% with almost 100% uptime, because you're almost always at maximum HP, and so I personally just don't really like to use this one. And his final trait is Ein. So at first I thought the devs were on some mushrooms for making this one, because it doesn't make any sense in the DLC, but then I figured out that this sigil should be used when you're still progressing through the base game, because what this one will do, it will simply give you extra damage when you're not using a Terminus weapon, but it caps your health at 45k. I do not have to explain why you shouldn't use this in the DLC, unless you want to play at ultra hard mode, but if you're still progressing through the game, it's a decent sigil. My summons is where I keep Spartan Echo, Berserker Echo and War Elemental, as well as the aforementioned Stout Heart. Now don't worry too much about these equip bonuses. They might look impressive, but to be honest, 100% damage cap is basically nothing anymore. And in fact, I actually prefer healing cap over damage cap if you want me to be completely honest. This one will just make your potion hoarder way more powerful than it already is, whereas the extra damage cap will just give an almost insignificant amount of damage. So yeah, make sure you just focus on the actual traits and not the equip bonuses. And now I'll just show you my entire sigil list in case you want to copy it. And that pretty much covers Sandalphon. Now once again, this guide was much more condensed than any of my previous guides, and that does mean that I haven't been able to talk about everything about Sandalphon, but you should still have a good enough understanding on how to use him in an actual fight now. So let me know if you like these faster paced guides, or if you prefer the more complete ones that I've made before. But either way, I hope to see you for one of those future guides as well. And so for now, thank you for watching, and have a wonderful day.